Hey you guys, it's Peter, and I'm back. Of course I'm back. I'm not going anywhere. Boost! I'm YouTube famous now. Available in 2018. The album, Dad AF. Hey little thing, let me light your candle, cause mama, I'm so hard to handle now, mess around. All right, let's get right into a little rock and roll. We'll rock and roll to a Jake Paul, Shane Dawson, Nick Crumpton, video today. Okay, so let's get into this video. I want to thank all of you out there who have been encouraging me to do the after shows, that have been tweeting me and saying a bunch of stuff about like, oh, I can't wait for your after show, I can't wait for your after show, and all that kind of stuff. So, I want to get into this video today, which is the 4th installment. We are halfway there now. We're halfway done with Shane Dawson's Mind of Jake Paul series. And let's just, before I get into that, okay, I want to read 2 things to you. First of all, I want to read this comment that I got on my video, Logan Paul's Dear Shane video confused me, which it did. I was very, very confused about Logan Paul's video. But I got this comment on here from Candace, and she said, I think everybody is missing the beginning, where he, Shane, talks about how that's all he heard from people when mentioning Jake Paul, referring to him being a sociopath. My take on the whole thing is that he's going on an adventure to find out if he really is. And you know what? I thought that was a really interesting comment, so thank you, Candace, for the comment. Candace, little shout out for you. I really liked that comment because I went back and I was like, oh, that's right. So this isn't just like Shane came up with this. It's like when Shane would talk to people, that's what he thought. And for that reason, I really, really liked, if you go to the beginning of this, this installment of the Jake Paul series, he talks to Morgan, Ryland's sister, about being a fan of Jake Paul's and like what she thought about Jake Paul and what questions she wants. And so I liked that part of it. I thought that was, I thought it humanized a lot of it and brought it to kind of like a fan level watching this. And you know, like I've always said, I'm like just an uber fan of YouTube, so I'm just very interested in the inner workings of YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I have my own people that I love to follow, and Shane's one of them. This video, well, this video was very interesting to me. I can say, without a shadow of a doubt, this was my favorite part in the series so far. My absolute favorite. I thought it was so well done. I do want to read something to you, though, from Shane that he said. He said in there, yesterday he put on Instagram, you know what? Fuck it. For part 4, I'm going full T. No censoring, no holding back, no worrying about pissed off people texting me. You guys wanted tea, and I'm going to bring the whole damn kettle. Grab onto your fucking mops. Yes, Shane Dawson, I live for that. I'm so ready. And bring it, he did. I was really, really excited about this episode. And, you know, I was a little worried because I had gotten so many comments from people where they said he's going to water it down. He's worried about what people are thinking about him. You know, people are saying, you know, you're doing this, you're doing that, the spooky music and all this kind of stuff. And so, you know, like a lot of people were worried that Shane wasn't going to put the series out that he really, really wanted to put out, you know? And I'm like, I'm living for him full T, straight ahead. 3 snaps, not 2. But anyway, I'm living for the fact that he went full T, all in, you know, all that. So anyway, I sat down, I brought a notepad, and then I just got so intrigued in watching it, I didn't take any notes. So this part of the series was really about Shane kind of, to me, exposing the Team 10 house, is what it felt like to me. And I had been waiting, and I said this on here and doing these after shows, I had been really, really waiting for the Nick Crumpton interview, who I think I called Nick Crumpton before, because that's how much I know about the Team 10 house. I mean, I knew a lot of it because I've watched, you know, videos off and on when the drama between Jake Paul or Logan Paul comes up. So, you know, I knew about, like, that's Logan sleeping with his ex and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, the paparazzi outside the house, I had watched all that kind of stuff. What is all of that about that one woman? I had forgotten about that. That one woman standing out there where Nick is taking the pictures and she's like, these are the people that pay your bills. These are the people. Yes, lady, we know, okay? Pipe down. So anyway, but I thought it was so well done. I have to tell you, okay, because so many people are commenting on the fact that, like, you know, Shane will, like, you know, somebody will say something to Shane like, well, you know, Jake, like, drove his car down the street, and Shane will go, and then there's all this spooky music. I live. That is called great filmmaking, is what it's called, okay? And if you don't like it, then don't watch the series. But don't say I told you that, because Shane was nice enough to put me in his series this time. So anyway, but yeah, I love all that. I love when they're sitting there talking and the music in the background, I just thought was really, really interesting. So this is what happens. He goes in there and he's talking about all of the Team 10 members, and he goes in there and he shows like the Martinez twins and all this kind of stuff, and he's showing a lot of clips, and he's talking about, you know, the several different girlfriends and the people that lived there then and the people that live there now, and on and on and on. And then he's going to do this interview with Nick Crompton, okay? And Nick Crompton had been with Jake Paul since like the very beginning, basically. He explains in there that the way, because Shane asks him, well, how did you guys meet? He said he had like started this marketing firm in the UK, and then he came over here to help Jake Paul start the whole Team 10 house. You know, and as I'm sitting here watching this, I'm like, you know, love him or hate him, like Jake Paul and Nick Crompton, they knew how to build a business. Like, they really, really did. And Shane even says, like, you know, with the rules and things like that, he's like, you know, I've never, in all my time on YouTube, I have never seen a squad built like this before, which I think is really interesting. And, you know, they were really kind of, we've seen other people do this, but they were really, like, the first of their kind as far as doing that. Especially when he goes in there, and I had heard about this from, I think it was like Keemstar did a bunch of like coverage of this back in the day. Keemstar has literally covered every Jake Paul incident that there has ever been, I think, in the entirety of history. But, you know, I remember him talking about like investors in Team 10 back in the day, and that, y'all watch Drama Alert? I love Drama Alert. So anyway, but, he goes in, he was talking back in the day about how there were investors in Team 10 to help get it started and all. I think that was Keemstar. So when they were talking about that, and Nick Crompton was like, yeah, Shane asked him, like, how did you get the original house and all this kind of stuff? You know, he said, well, there were investors that, you know, like, paid whatever. And then he explained, you know, like, the 20%. And Shane's like, but they, like, Jake takes 20% of each person, right? And he's like, no, it's not really like that. It's like, you know, the Team 10 house is like the business. And so 20% from each person goes into Team 10, and then Jake is like the CEO, like the acting CEO, which is interesting then, because it makes you wonder, well, who's the chief operating officer? Especially since later, okay, because the chief operating officer is really the one that would have control over all the money, or the chief financial officer, which, if we're talking about this being like a major business, which it is when you talk about the kind of money that they're making, okay, there wouldn't just be a CEO, there would also be a, you know, a chief financial officer that's managing all the money, and who gets paid what. So then it makes you wonder, well, how much is Jake getting paid from Team 10 of all this working? And does he pay 20% of his salary into what goes into Team 10 as well, if that makes sense? And then do they get a salary? You know, Nick kind of talked about that. It goes into the runnings of the Team 10 house, so everybody pays 20%. Does Jake Paul pay 20% too? That would be interesting to me, you know? To know, like, well, is what you're making going into the building of the Team 10 house? Because he would have to. Because he's literally building the careers of these people so that they are helping them build their careers so that 20% can go into, I mean, let's just be for real, okay? Honestly, half of these people on there, it's like Tana Mojo's crew, right? Like, I mean, she doesn't have like a Team 10 house, but her friends, like half of them would be nobody on YouTube if Tana Mojo hadn't put them in videos and helped them rise to fame, or flame, I guess. But anyway, you know what I mean? So like half these people wouldn't even be known on YouTube, have music videos, have merch, all this kind of stuff if it wasn't for Jake Paul. So is it like this just, is the story behind everything that this is just a huge business conglomerate? Like, is that it? You know, and then they go into, the most interesting part to me was when Shane started asking him about, you know, like, is it fake or is it real? Meaning, like, all of the pranks that they pull and all that kind of stuff. And Nick was really, really hesitant to talk about that. He was like, well, you know, like, yada, yada, yada. I don't really want to ruin it for the kids because Jake Paul's audience is kids. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm like, you know, even though he says later that the last time he texted Jake was before the boxing match and he hasn't heard back from him, it's like he still has one foot in the door of the Team 10 house because he helped develop it. And so emotionally, it seemed to me like Nick is still really emotionally invested to some degree in the Team 10 house because he didn't really want to say anything bad about it. And I don't feel like he really did say anything bad about it. You know, I thought he was just it seemed like he was very honest, but ambiguous at times too. And like he didn't really want to go in and say, well, this is fake and that's fake and this is fake and that's fake. And his reasoning is he didn't want to ruin it for the kids that are watching it. And Shane even said, well, kind of like Santa Claus. And he was like, yeah, something like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, but a lot of these pranks that you're talking about are like, and he even acknowledges this, like things that maybe like an 8-year-old shouldn't be watching. And he talks about like the whole kidnapping thing and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting then to want to know, well, like, I mean, and obviously that's staged. it makes you wonder, well, like, which ones are staged and which ones aren't, you know, and I'm thinking, thank God, listen, I mean, I know I'm the old man on YouTube, but there is no way I could have lived up in that Team 10 house, okay? Forever worrying somebody was gonna, you know, like, I don't know, throw water on me or push me in front of a car or something. I would have been scared to death for my life 24 hours a day. And then to hear later, who was it? I think Alyssa Violet, she said that it's not all real and that people were never in danger. Okay, so that was after she left. I think it was her that after she left the house, they showed like a clip of that. And so I'm like, well, that's assuring to know that, right? But then it makes you wonder what is fake and what is real. And are they sitting down and they're having like creative team meetings and they're saying, okay, what's the next prank we're gonna pull? And we're gonna build it, because they talk about the Martinez twins, like they built a fake room and then destroyed it. And so it's like, okay, so are you then, like, how much of it is really fake? Like, are you sitting down, like, at that table, a boardroom table, and having discussions about the next prank? Who's gonna pull it? Who's gonna be there? What percentage of this and that and whatever? You know, like, I mean, who's gonna tweet out this about that and all this kind of stuff? So it makes you wonder really how well of a, like, tightly oiled machine the Team 10 house is, and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, from a business point of view, it's extremely interesting. And then he goes in there and he asks, you know, like, about has he ever seen, like, Jake Paul show real emotion? And Nick was like, yeah, he has. And he said he doesn't believe that he's a sociopath. But then at the end of the interview, he seemed to kind of like stray a little bit from that. I don't know if anybody else got that feeling, but he seemed to kind of like stray from that a little bit. But he did say in there that he doesn't believe that Jake Paul is a sociopath because he is able to show, you know, emotion and all this kind of stuff. The other thing that he said that I thought was really interesting in there was that he was afraid at one point that Logan and Jake were going to take each other down. Like that the competition, the competitiveness between the two of them just seemed to be too much, and that it was going to take them, you know, down or tear them apart. And he goes, but something to the effect of that they don't have the same kind of relationship that, you know, people think they do. And then he referred to their growing up and, like, you know, their dad, like, you know, challenging them against each other. Yet again, bringing up the whole interesting factor of sibling rivalry, right? Which now it's come up several times in the series. So it's like, you know, at some point, Shane's going to ask that question. Did y'all hear when Shane said that he's going to ask Jake Paul, and if Jake Paul lies to him, he's going to get up and leave the interview? I want to see that. And I believe Shane would do it too. Shane has invested too much time and energy into this series. There is no way he is going to sit there and make an 8-part series about somebody. And I know a lot of people are like, well, he's going to, you know, he's going to water it down and whatever. I didn't think he watered down the interview with Nick Crompton at all. I thought he asked important questions, you know, and I thought, like, it was interesting. Shane's a good interviewer, obviously, but it was interesting how he kind of, like, talked around. Like, if he wanted to ask Nick something, but, like, he didn't want to come right out and ask him, he would say, is this something I shouldn't ask Jake, right? And then Nick would kind of talk about it a little bit. It was very, very smart the way that Shane asked that as an interviewer. And I was super, super intrigued with it. You know, at the end, Nick started talking about, you know, Jake and Logan's dad, Greg Paul, and that he was really the reason why Nick ended up leaving the Team 10 house. I also thought that it was interesting when he talked in there about how he knew the second that he told Jake that Jake would want him out immediately, right? I don't know that that's necessarily sociopathic behavior, but I do think that that shows somebody that, like, I don't know, and like the trust issues are real difficult for him. And maybe, you know, Jake is at a point where he's like, I don't feel like I can trust anybody. It's like, you know, they're living in the house, we have this, and then as soon as they leave. I think it's interesting. I've always wondered, though, with these people in the Team 10 house, do they not have, like, non-disclosure contracts that as soon as they leave the Team 10 house, they can't make videos talking about it? Like, that's interesting to me, right? That all these people have come out afterwards and made these videos, like, or do they have non-disclosure contracts and they just choose to violate them anyway? Like, I think that would be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see, interesting, that's been the word of the day here. It's gonna be interesting to see how much Greg Paul plays into all of this as his father, you know, and like him wanting to control the Team 10 house and Jake Paul and all this kind of stuff, which is what Nick alluded to. And he even said it wasn't the first time that he came in, that he had come in here, there a couple times, I think he said twice, and the first time, you know, he had talked to Jake, Nick had talked to Jake and said, I think that you really should, like, your dad needs to go, and so he went back to Ohio. But then after that, he came back, and that was when, you know, Nick was like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore, right? So it makes you wonder who's really running the Team 10 house, right? And when you think about that, I think from the perspective of what Jake wants it to appear, that the pranks are real, you know, that the relationships are real with these people, does he really want people thinking that his dad is running the show? Like, I have a feeling that's not what Jake Paul wants. So if that comes out and is exposed in this series, that's going to be very, very interesting. You know, we're not talking about momagers here, okay? We're not talking about Kris Jenner, and we're not talking about, you know, dance moms on Dance Moms. We're talking about somebody coming in after you've already established a business and running it, right? Like, I don't know. Like, that's interesting why somebody would allow that. So, especially somebody that's being so successful. If Shane gets into that, I think, and he's like, you know, I don't really want to go there. I don't really want to talk about it, whatever. But, you know, he's like, I think I'm going to have to. Yeah, I think he's going to have to talk about it. Like, I think it's a huge factor in what's going on. And I think that Shane has let it out enough through clips that he wouldn't have done that if Greg Paul wasn't going to be in the series at some point, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that he would have shown clips of him and asked Nick about him if he wasn't going to go and talk about it, because he wouldn't want people to think, like, oh, I'm going to bring this up, but then I'm not going to talk about it. So I do think he's going to come into the series at some point. Now, Jake is supposed to come out in the 5th episode, which is the next one. I'm ready! That's going to be interesting. I mean, there'll be like a whole episode where they go in, they do a tour, and then the net episode after that will probably be where they sit down and talk. That'll be the 6th one, and then it makes you wonder, at the end of this episode, they showed Alyssa Violet calling Shane and saying that she wanted to tell her side of the story. So, you know, that will be another piece. I mean, now, Shane, can you make it 16 episodes? Do people want to see 16 episodes? Are there any of you out there, this is what I want to know at this point, okay? If you're watching this and you haven't watched any of the series yet, you should at least watch this 4th part, because it was really, really interesting, and it might make you want to watch the rest of the series. But I still have a lot of people out there that are saying, I'm not going to give a view to Jake Paul about this or whatever. So how many of you out there are like watching it? How many of you are not watching it? How many of you are out there and you're like, I said I wasn't going to watch it, but now I'm going to watch it. I'm in it to win it. I'm loving this series. Now, this 4th one, it just totally, like, I bought into all of it after this 4th episode. I thought it was really, really well done. So, he'll be putting out his next episode on Friday. Don't forget to come back here and check out the after show on Friday. It'll be up. And before I go, I just want to say this. You know, in life, there is a lot of negativity and there is a lot of positivity. It has been brought to my attention that a lot of people that watch my videos, you know, like to send, I don't know, negativity out somewhere in defense of me. I don't stand for that. I don't stand for that at all. I don't want any negativity out there in the world, you know, because of somebody defending me or saying anything like that. So take that into mind when we're interacting with people. We're adults. We can treat people with compassion and kindness and try to be better human beings than we've been the day before. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.